when you're a kid, your parents have all the answers, whether or not they do.
Yeah. And they're right all the time, too.
And they're right all the time. They have all the answers. And you are full of questions.
Exactly.
And then there comes a time when you realize your parents don't have all the answers to the questions that you've posed. Not only that, you reach a point where you've posed questions where nobody has the answer. And this is a point of intellectual maturity that is terrifying. How could we not know the answer? How is that possible? What? How? And if you look through the history of unknowns in our culture, that is a fundamental role religion has played. Religion of all stripes. You go back to ancient Greece, we call it mythology, but it's really their religion, all right? Zeus and Neptune, not Neptune, Poseidon. And so there's a storm. I don't know anything about storms. I don't know anything about the Coriolis force or the ocean atmosphere connection or moisture and relative humidity. I don't know anything about any of that yet. Poseidon is angry. A lightning bolt hit. Zeus is angry. Those are my explanations, and I'm done. Now I don't have to live in some kind of profound state of ignorance about the world around me and its effect on my life. After death, I have no idea. Am I actually rotting in the ground? No, you are in some other place. You're on Valhalla or heaven or whatever the religion provides for that belief system. You cannot become a scientist if you require that every question has an answer. Because it's the very questions that have no answers that attract you to the laboratory every single day. So there's got to be some kind of a shift. Part of it is you never really grew up from childhood because you're always asking questions. But you've successfully made the transition to say, here's a question, not only did my parents not know, nobody doesn't know. And I will then set up an entire lab just to find that answer. And when you do find that answer, that is one of the greatest moments that can happen in a scientist's life. Education, I think, at its best, is not telling you you're wrong or even telling you you're right. It's teaching you how to be curious so that you know how to find an answer. And so if I tell you that if you rub these crystals together, it'll heal you, and you say, oh, wow, that's great, give me them, I'll buy them. You say, well, that's stupid, right? Or if you say, that's ridiculous, get out of here, you know, that is equally as intellectually lazy as it is to accept them. What takes more work is questioning it. Where they come from? What are they made of? What's their chemical composition? Where did you find them? What tests showed that what you're... By the time you ask, the person's gone. They're not going to sell it to you because you asked questions. So the point is there are people who are being handed their opinions. They're being handed their points of views by people who they do not know how to question. And those are not the seeds of an informed democracy. In fact, that's the beginning of the unraveling of an informed democracy. And the moment somebody's opinion is handed to everybody, that we know what kind of governments those are, and those are not free societies. Those are free societies where your thought is controlled by people. The public likes to know if we discover a planet that looks like Earth. All right, just, recently, a planet was discovered, an Earth-like planet, was discovered around a star. That alone today is not new news, all right? But this one is orbiting the closest star to the sun, Proxima Centauri. And there's the Alpha Centauri system is a multiple star system. You can see it from the southern hemisphere easily. It's a bright star system. But you go look at it with a telescope, it splits out into multiple stars. One of them, the nearest one, Proxima Centauri, has an Earth-like planet around it. So now, if you're going to make an inventory of planets you want to visit, that's probably going to be the highest one on the list. Problem is, spacecraft we have today, the fastest we've ever launched, if you put people on board that and aim it towards Proxima Centauri, it would take, 50,000 years to get there.
Wow.
So here I'm saying it's the closest one, but it would take basically 1,000 generations. If you send a generational ship, you'd have to load it with very fertile people. Okay, so they would have one generation after the next. 1,000 generations later, they would arrive. Who knows whether they would have evolved into some other kind of form of humans by then, because they're an isolated gene pool at that point. So there's a journalistic urge among science journalists to hang out in the coffee lounges of, I'm stereotyping this, but the sense is correct. Hang out in the coffee lounges of science departments, or in the science workshops where people are reporting the latest results, or you hang out at the editorial offices of Nature magazine or Science magazine, and a research paper gets published that conflicts with previous work or comes out with some new idea. The journalist reports that as truth. That is not a scientific truth. One research paper, refereed and published, does not make a scientific truth. We have systems in place that establish scientific truths, and it is not ever a single paper. Somebody else has to verify that. Somebody else has to check it. Somebody else has to do a different kind of experiment looking for the same phenomenon, a different way, so that they don't duplicate what might be the error in your designed experiment. Once this happens, then you have an emergent truth. And so people don't actually, because of this, people don't actually understand how and why science works, which I think is why you have people throwing snowballs in Congress, all right, on the floor of the House of Representatives, and you have people hearing, oh, cholesterol's good for you this week, it's bad for you next week, it's going to be good for you in a month, thinking that scientists have their head up their ass. Okay. When in fact...
It's the journalists who do.
Well, no. So it's how you report.
Okay, but this is where I want to go. Apply...
The reason why the results change each week, because it hasn't settled out yet. So don't report it as true.
So apply, this is where I really want to go.
Sorry, I'm screaming. Sorry.
This is what we want. This is what we want.
He started that. I was calm before that began. Go. Do people understand that science is more a process than a list of answers? That's a separate issue from whether the public requires an answer to something. Whether the public comes to doubt the value of science because a result changes from one week to the next. And with regard to science being a process, that's just a missing part of the science curriculum in K through 12. That's got to get in there somehow. We get textbooks and there's a problem at the end of the chapter and there's an answer to it and you got to get the answer and you start to value the answer rather than the process that would lead to that answer or another. So uncertainty as well as ambiguity are not elements of a science curriculum, but they clearly need to be. Otherwise, you're incapable of thinking in meaningful ways about the frontier of science. Let's get to the exploded rocket on the launch pad. One thing we've failed to do in the educational system is alert people that if you're doing what no one has done before, stuff goes wrong. And in fact, if nothing ever goes wrong in what you're doing, if you make no mistakes in your job, in whatever task you've brought upon yourself, then you're not on the frontier. Simple. It's true in science, and I heard it applied to car racing. There's a quote that I'm told, spoken by Mario Andretti. He said, if you are in complete control of your car, you're not in the race.
Oh, wow.
There's something that you're just not completely in control of.
I take that.
And only then and that's the same thing I'm describing for when you are on the frontier. And SpaceX is on the frontier, not a space frontier where they're going farther than NASA has gone. They're on another kind of a frontier where they want to make access to space maximally affordable. So that means they have to design their rockets differently from how anybody else had done it before, and they're going to be mistakes. So I see the explosion on the launch pad, and I say that is an occurrence that is rich with learning opportunities. It's not just a spin, it's real.
Yeah.
And it's a spectacular explosion because the whole rocket is filled with fuel. But it's typically one little thing that went wrong that they had not anticipated. They have to design it differently. Go back to the early days of NASA. There's footage on YouTube. Yeah. Rockets blowing up all the time because no one had put rockets in space before. So now they're trying to do it in a whole new way. I'm going to expect that and more of it.